Most days you'll find him making an excellent spaghetti alla carbonara and saying the word caca over and over again. Please welcome to the stage John Papa.
Thanks, Joe. So you guys excited about Angular 2? It's pretty cool. And it's on the best day of the year, right? May the 4th, Star Wars Day. So with that, a theme of an Angular 2 Force Awakens, my favorite movies. And Angular 2 is a force as it's coming through. I'm John Papa. I'm a Google development expert for the Angular team. And there's been an awakening here. To me, Angular 1 was awesome, but Angular 2 just blows it away. There's so much great stuff coming with Angular 2. And it's all of us in this room. Thank you for wearing your costumes today. Took this photo out there. Everybody's excited to start using Angular like I am. But I want to share with you a development experience story. How do we actually write code in Angular? Because it's not just about what the tool does. Software is software. It's about what the people do with the tool. It's about the experience we have with coding it. And something you're going to notice, or more specifically not notice during my talk, is less. There's less things in Angular 2 you have to do than in Angular 1. So you're going to notice that I'm writing code, but you're going to see things that you're not seeing. There's a lot less things we have to actually take care of. So I'm going to go over 7 keys in Angular 2. Modules, components, and templates, the key parts of Angular 2 to build an application. We're going to be using ES6 modules. How data binding works. Structural directives to build different code. Services we can pull in other parts of the application, maybe using HTTP. And the new dependency injection platform. So with that, let's just write some code together. Nothing could go wrong, right? All right, so we've got an application here, and what I've done is I've pulled down the quick start, which is up on the docs. So once you pull down the quick start, if you run it, you can write npm start, and it will crank it up. And hey, it works. Thank you for having me, and I'll see you guys around the conference. All right, so you've got your quick start up here, and we want to add some things to the application. It's Star Wars Day, and we've got Tour of Heroes, a great demo up on the documentation. Let's figure we want to create a list of heroes in our application. We'll come into our app component, and over in the app component, we want to use interpolation up here. Instead of just hard coding this value, let's go ahead and put in a title. Well, this means we have to create a property. So we'll create the title down here. And by doing just simply that, we can take the title and display it on the page. And then over here, I still have got my title over here. Wonderful. So what if I want to add a list of heroes to my app? Let's go and create a heroes folder. And then over in the folder, we're going to create a heroes component. So once I create that component, it'd be nice if I had some way to quickly create the component. Well, there's some snippets that we're going to take advantage of, where I can instantly type all this in. No, I did not type that fast. So in here I can say, all right, I'm going to type in my heroes, there's my components, and everything's up and running for this guy. On him, I want to have a list of heroes. And again, because you don't want to watch me type an array, I'm going to copy the array. And inside of my init, I'm going to create this heroes property, which has got a bunch of hero names in it. Well, I'm going to need a heroes property as well, and I want to have a class called hero. So where do I get this guy from? Well, I'm going to have to create a new model. So we'll create a new file called hero model. And we better spell it right. And then up in here, we'll create a class. And this guy is going to have an ID of a number. And we'll give him a name, which is a string. And we'll come back over here. But how do we use that hero in this class? We have to import him using modules. So thus, this is where the modules come into play for us. And notice that I'm pulling code in here. And what am I not doing? I'm not adding a script tag to my index.html. I don't have to worry about this, because the module loading that Angular comes with is automatically going to load this code up. So now that I've got this list of heroes, I want to display it inside this HTML file. Well, I've got to go create that HTML file. So let's go create him as well. So over here, we'll create the HTML. And let's create a UL, and I'm going to use a special class that I've got here called heroes. We'll use a little bit of Emmet to do this. And inside of there, I'm going to create an LI. Well, if I want to display the heroes, I'm going to have to use a little bit of magic, something called the ng-for. So I'll type in another snippet, ng2, and then I go down to 4, and I can say, all right, give me a hero in the list of heroes. And the first thing I'll do inside of there is I'll put out the hero's name. But I want to put a little bit more in there too. Let's use a little bit of styling. So we're going to create a span, and that span's got a class called a badge, and inside of there, I'm going to create a hero with an ID. So now I've got my list of heroes. That hero that's over here, that's going to be the guy who's over in this array that I created, in my heroes array. Well, I want to use a little bit of style, and you don't want to watch me type CSS, believe me. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little copy-paste magic. Close your eyes. And we've got a little bit of CSS now. So how do I associate that CSS with my component? I come into here, and I can type in style URLs. And then I got my heroes component CSS, which I pass into it. One thing you'll notice I'm not doing again is I'm not typing in app/heroes/heroes component CSS. This is a big problem in larger apps when you move files around, because then you have to change the file paths too. I don't need to do that because Angular is using this module ID property to figure out, using the module loader, where am I located. It's contextual. So it actually prepends that string for us and takes care of it. So that's a little bit of magic that we don't have to worry about. So now that I've got this heroes component, I've got this element called tour of heroes, and I need to put it back on my app component. So over here, I'm going to change my string to a backtick. That's the key nobody knew was on their keyboard. And then I'm going to go up here and just type in the element right below it. So the backtick's going to give me a multi-line string, and I can put my tour of heroes there. But wait, does the browser know what a tour of heroes element is? No. So let's go ahead and import that component as well. So over here, we're going to go into the heroes folder and get the heroes components. Component's like the hardest word for me to spell. And then it's going to reach in, and I'm getting IntelliSense telling me what's in that file. A heroes component. Great. So now we're going to declare to Angular what I'm using on that page. Well, there's this directive called heroes component. So now we've told the app component how to associate itself and to recognize that heroes component on the page. So doing all of this, let's take a look at our application. And now we have an application which has got a bunch of heroes over here. So, how many browsers do I have open? That's always a good question. Hey, actually, that's the application. I'm like, I only had 5. What happened? They multiplied. Let's kill that one. So now that I've got this list and I've got my little CSS running over here, let's say I wanted to do something like select a hero. We happen to like Ray, so we'll select Ray. Well, to do that, I'm going to have to go back into my heroes component and use a couple more features of Angular. Inside of here, we're going to go back into here, and we're going to create a click event, and we're going to bind to it with the parentheses. That says go ahead and communicate back down to our component so we can call something. So we're going to create a function called onSelect, and we're going to pass the hero to it. So I'll go back into the component. Now we've got to create that function. So I'm going to create an onSelect function over here, and it's going to get a hero, and there's my code for it. So the hero is going to come in, but I have to set this to a property. We'll create a new property called selected hero. And we'll copy that, because now we have to create that in our class. And that's also going to be of type hero up top. So now we selected it, but it's not going to do anything yet. We could console log it, but that's kind of cheating. So let's go ahead and do a little CSS magic again. Up into here, we can take advantage of property binding to bind to a class. I have a class called selected in my CSS. So what I want to do is say class.selected, and I want to bind that with property binding. And then when I do that, I want to set that to an expression. I want to say when the hero that's in that row is equal to this selected hero property, let's make sure that's the name that I used, and it is. When that happens, it's going to apply the selected class to this particular element. So now, if I flip over to Chrome and I highlight somebody, I can select them. Not too bad, right? Think about how you do that in Angular 1 with different kind of things like ng-class. Now we don't need any of those ng- directives. Notice we're not using those for ng-click or ng-class or ng-style. We're just using what's built into the DOM. Okay, but we can do a little bit more. What about changing data? When I select somebody, what if I wanted to create another hero component, something to show the details? Well, let's do that. Let's push the limits here. We'll create a hero component, and inside the hero component, we'll take advantage of our snippets again, and I can call this guy tour heroes hero, and I'll call the hero component like that. And notice we're using a standard set of conventions for file naming and symbol naming, which you can find all up in the style guide that's Brad announced in the keynote. And in this component, we don't actually need to do a lot. We just need a hero property, and it's going to be of type hero. And again, we want to import that because we've got that class that we can take advantage of. So I can go in and say hero model, and I can get the hero out of here. But if I want to pass the hero in to this hero detail component, I need a way to get in. Unlike in Angular 1 where directives could kind of reach out, or components could reach out to other components in scope, in Angular 2, they're a little more strict about this, where you have to actually tell it what you want to pass in or out. So we're going to tell it this guy here is an input property. And to get input, which is a special decorator, I've got to import that from Angular. So now we told Angular that we've got this thing called a hero, which we're going to use inside of our template. So I'm going to go create a template, and I'm going to create a div. Now, what if I don't select a hero? I don't want it to break on me, so I'm going to use another structural directive called ng-if. And ng-if, I'm going to say, if there's a hero, display this. Otherwise, don't even put it in the DOM. And then we're going to do something like we selected, and then put our hero's name here. We'll create an input, and we'll say we can change this person. We're going to use a special directive called ng-model, which you wrap with parentheses and square brackets. Now, ng-model is going to be our two-way data binding. The square brackets you can think of as saying, take the value from the component, stick it in the view, and then the parentheses let me say, okay, when I change this value in the view, send that value back down to the component. It gives us the ability to do our two-way data binding. And then we can bind that to hero. So now we've got our hero component set up, but we have to tell our hero's components the list about it. So again, we'll come down here, and we'll import inside of the hero list this guy, and we'll go into hero component, and we'll pull him out. It's actually singular. And then over here, we've got to declare and say, you in this directives are using this particular component. Well, let's go into our list, and we'll put it at the top just so it's easy to see. And I'm going to create a hero component like that, and I'm going to actually add it to that list. So now I need to pass in the selected hero. Well, the property on my component was called hero, so I'm going to bind to that, so I use the square brackets. And then inside of there, I'm going to type in selected hero, like that. So now when I select the hero, it's going to set the hero property, go into my hero detail component, and it should be displaying it on the screen. So let's flip back over to our application. And when I select here, I've bound to the object. A little debugging on the fly. Notice in the hero component, I've bound to the actual hero. I actually want to show the name. So over here we've got a list. I can type in Chewbacca or Ray, and I can change Ray's name to Luke, because we all know where Ray's coming from, right? We hope. Maybe Ben, I don't know. Hey, for all we know, it could be this guy. So we put all this in there, and it loads up. Looks great. We got two-way data binding. We can select different people. We can edit them. What about not hard coding? Does everybody here like the hard code? I mean, real applications, you tend to just hard code it right into the view, right? Let's pretend that we don't like the hard code. Instead, we can take advantage of Angular 2 services. So let's create a new service in our heroes folder. We'll call it a hero service. And inside of there, we'll use another snippet. Actually, an Angular 2 snippet would be better. There we go. And we'll call this guy hero. Now notice a service is just a class. There is no provider, constant value, factory service. Thank you, Igor. So we just use a plain old class, and I can create a plain old function. I think we're all pretty good at doing that. And I can just return the value of get heroes for now. All right, so I want to use this hero service inside of my heroes component to get that list. To do that, of course, I'm going to import up top. So we'll import this guy. We'll go to heroes.service, and we'll come back to import him. Now, once I import the heroes service, I actually think it's hero, isn't it? Yes, it is. Cool. Once I import that, I now have to tell the Angular injector that this service exists. So to do that, I've got to tell it in the providers list. This is the way I tell Angular that the service is available, and this component or any child of it can use it. So once I've got that hero service, then I can use constructor injection and say, all right, let's create a hero service here. It's of type hero service. That'll create a private property that I can use. And then in here, I can say this heroes equals, and I go to this hero service, dot get heroes, like that. So now I'm getting a synchronous set of values from my service, because I set the provider up here to tell it about it, so the Angular injector knows it's there. The constructor says, hey, Angular injector, do you know of something known as the hero service? It says, why, of course I do, John, it's right here. And then it says, boom, we can use this to get our heroes. We flip back over to our app, and look, we still have heroes. Yay! All right, but guys like to use HTTP as well, don't we? So let's pretend we had a database. I'm going to create a file called heroes.json just to emulate it real quick. And again, because you don't want to watch me type JSON, let's see if I can paste it in. I don't think that's the right one. There we go. So we've got our heroes.json file. Let's say we wanted our service to not explicitly hardcode this again. Instead, we want to use HTTP. Well, just like with the hero service, we had to tell Angular that it existed. Let's go up into our app component, at our root here, in our main component, and let's tell it that we want to use HTTP. So we're going to use an import statement again, and here we're going to say, hey, Angular. And it's going to say, yeah, John? What do you want? And then it's going to say, oh, I want these HTTP providers. What, Angular doesn't talk to you? All right, so we get our HTTP providers. We've now told it that HTTP is a thing that we need to be able to get. All right, so inside of the service, now we're going to take advantage of HTTP. We're going to import it down here. We're going to say, okay, let's go back into the Angular HTTP, and we're going to pull out HTTP itself, and we're going to deal with the response, so we'll get him out. So now down in here, we got to type in a constructor to get our HTTP service. So we're going to say, okay, we'll get HTTP. The constructor is now going to know how to get that guy. And inside of our heroes function, I've got another snippet, which is called HTTP get. And in there, I'm going to pass in my different URL. I think it's app/heroes.json. And then it's going to map back a response. In this case, it's just my pure JSON, so I'm going to use it. But I can map and modify that response if I wanted to, trim it, do other things with it as well. And to use that, I'm going to pull in a piece of RX. RX for reactive extensions is where the map function comes out of. So over this one, we're going to type in RxJS, and then, I always get this wrong, we're going to type it in and see what happens. And then, it's probably the backwards. Let's go look. It is add operator map. I always get them backwards. So it's letting me pull in the map function out of Rx so I can use that in my mapping. Now, this all sounds great, but I have got a problem now. I'm calling HTTP and it's doing an asynchronous action. Well, back in my heroes component, I'm actually getting my heroes synchronously. So that's not going to work anymore. So now, I can take advantage of another snippet called subscribe. And I'm going to pop that in. Into my service, I'm going to type in heroes service. And then I'm going to tell it the function I wanted to get out of my service, get heroes. And my arg is going to bring me back a list of heroes and set my property called heroes. So now I've asynchronously pulled in the heroes from my JSON file from this service over here. And that service is being injected inside of my heroes component in the constructor. So I run back to my application. Scribe is not a function in there. Oh, I didn't put parentheses in, did I? By the way, when you call functions, you need parentheses. Hey, if that's my biggest problem today, I'm doing pretty good. So Chewbacca can be here, and we can say Jesse Liberty is now Chewbacca. Ray can be Brad Green, and Han Solo could be Ward Bell. There we go. I don't think he looks like that, but if you see Ward Bell around today, you can tell him he looks like Han Solo. He loves Star Wars, by the way. Loves it. So what we've done here is we've built an application where we've used HTTP to pull data in, services, dependency injection, data binding, property binding, and you notice we never had to deal with a lot of ng dashes inside of our app, which is pretty cool. And the application got put together pretty quickly. So I'm going to push this up to GitHub, and just to kind of wrap up, show you some of the tools that we used here today. So we saved a lot of keystrokes by using these snippets that I showed you. You can get these up for VS Code at this link here. As we add more snippets, we'll put them up in the style guide so people can get to them. But we can do better than what I did today. I wrote an app in 18 minutes. You could forget everything I just showed you if you use the Angular CLI. You can do it in about 15 seconds. So go check out Mike's session or later this week on how to use the Angular CLI. It'll show you how to do all that. It's super fast, super cool. And then how do you get on the right path? The Angular 2 style guide is now created as a living document. It will be updated probably daily for a long time. There's a whole bunch of people who have been really helpful in creating this and crafting it. So I want to thank all these folks out here. We've also gotten a lot of feedback that the vocabulary in the style guide was a little iffy sometimes. So now what we're saying is we can tell you, oh, do this, avoid this, and this one's like a consider. It's kind of like, you should do this, but if you don't want to, it's your own choice. So you can check out the style guide up on the site. Looks good. It's actually in the Angular IO docs now. I've taken down my GitHub page for it that we were using. And if you want to stay in the right path, you want to check out Minko's talk later this week on Codelizer. He's working with me directly to be able to show you which styles you might be not applying and which ones you can decide not to do yourself. And then finally, thank you for coming. And if you want to learn more, you can check out my Angular 2 course. Thank you very much.